Well, that was kind of a flash for our guest that everybody got before the intro started to play. But welcome everybody to Gardens the Untold Story with our host Andy Lopez, myself, Ken Somerville, and we have a special guest. Andy, you're friends, so please introduce our guest.
So this is Michael Wittman, and I want to tell you a really brief story how I met him. I was buying this bamboo vinegar illegally from China because it was not legal in the United States.
Okay.
And then somehow I found out he was selling it, right, Michael?
Yeah.
Now, I guess he got caught, spent some time in jail because now he's not selling that anymore. Now he's making his own wood vinegar. And we're going to talk about that because this stuff is absolutely amazing. And he's into biochar, all the good stuff. There's another thing that he's into, but Ken and I couldn't spell it. What is that?
The stoves?
Sure. No, we're going to talk about the stove, the Fab Stove. But it's the other thing.
Terra Preta.
Terra Preta? What is that?
Terra Preta? Terra Preta, it's Terra Preta de Indio, which is a Portuguese term for dark soil of the indigenous. Mm-hmm. And it refers to a region in the Amazon rainforest, which the Amazonians transformed from very poor soil to very rich soil by adding biochar to the soil over a 1500 to 2000 year period.
Way cool.
And there's a lot of history behind all of that, but they weren't the first, but they did do it to the largest degree of any other culture in the world.
So, Michael, how did you get into this? Have you always been this intelligent, or did one day you woke up and go, whoa, my God? So what happened?
It's more about being a very, very curious person. You know, I can't kind of sit still when I get into something. You know, I really go all out into it. And even with the work that I'm doing now, you know, it's just never ending. I'm always finding new things to be improving it and making it more efficient, more regenerative. If you want to use the word sustainable, it's always that goal in mind in any project or any kind of thing I'm building.
I like the burning you had the other day. You want to tell people about that?
Yeah, we did a biochar burn in a cone kiln, which we actually have transformed into pyramid kilns. I just happen to have one and no pyramid kilns left. We sold them all. But point is that we used it. It's a very simple system. Basically, it's a truncated cone. There is a picture on it on one of my videos on YouTube. And what we do with it is it's mimicking the way the indigenous peoples did it in a pit in the ground. So we just have a pit we could take anywhere. And we made it out of steel with a nice rigid edge on it. We start a little pile of wood in the middle, burn from the top. That's the key in making biochar in whatever method other than sophisticated machines, is you always light from the top. If you light from the bottom, you'll just get a bunch of ash. If you light from the top, you can control it as it breaks down into a bed of coals. Then you put the next layer of wood in, the next layer, and the next layer, and so forth. When we're done at the top, we quench it with water. So we are already pre-prepared with our water. We have 8 5-gallon buckets filled with water and wood vinegar, which is going to condition that biochar as it's cooling down. And then after it's all cool, we drain that water and use it because it's really valuable water. Yeah. It went through the process. So it's got many of the characteristics that wood vinegar has.
Yeah.
And I can't call it a wood vinegar, but it is has a lot of similar characteristics. So it's good to put on your compost or in your garden beds or wherever. So, you know, we're in California, we're very water conscious. So, you know, we recycle, repurpose, reuse everything wherever possible. And water is one of them. You know, 40 gallons. Ooh, what am I going to pour that on the ground? No, I'm going to reuse it. And now I got something special in it.
I tell you, that particular, when I started using the bamboo vinegar, I noticed a big difference in the increase of the biology in my liquids. And because of that, the increase in the biology and everything else I was doing too. And then I'm using your stuff as well, which is I get the same result. So that's a big up for you there, see? And I really love it because I like you, I'm learning all the time, and now I have the ability to actually make more liquid, more stuff. I got the worm farm finally going here. Worms are happy. And that liquid makes a big difference. When I bubble it, oxygen does something to everything, right?
Yes. Well, wood vinegar, and not everybody knows about this, and biochar are co-products of the same process. So it's not a byproduct, it's actually equal. And it's a very valuable product with many, many uses. Just like biochar, we know of 55 uses for biochar. It's not just for soil. It's just, dozens of other uses for it. And the wood vinegar is very much the same. Now, the Chinese wood vinegar or the bamboo vinegar that I sold for many years, I bought a bottle online from a guy in Tennessee, a little teeny bottle. And I used it and I went, whoa, okay. So I recontacted him, and it wasn't easy to find him because he pulled the thing down eventually. Finally, the guy, get him on the phone. He goes, oh, yeah, we brought a pallet of that in a few years ago, and everybody took a little bit, but we're not going to do it again. So I just contacted the company in China, and they sent me, of all people, an American guy from up in the Bay Area who was my rep. We became friends. So I get my first load, and it's a good product, very good. I mean, they make a good product, no question about it. But over the years of working with them, it became difficult because they messed up on shipping, they messed up on packaging. I bought a trailer full of biochar from them, the bamboo biochar from China, very fine product.
Yeah, it is.
When I got it, the bags had ripped open on the sides of the pallets, and I had like a whole layer on the bottom of the truck. We couldn't even get the pallet jacks in. We had to sweep it out onto the ground. And then, of course, I couldn't sell that. Of course, I used it because it didn't matter. We can't hurt biochar. But that was a disaster, and they never paid me back for the problems. And then I decided just the wood vinegar, just the bamboo. So I'm ordering over the years. And then the last big batch that I got of 3,000 liter bottles, half of them had bad seals and they were leaking. So I had a problem with that. And that was like the end of it. So I searched around and I found the perfect replacement, made in America, less expensive.
Yeah.
And an interesting fact, the bamboo wood vinegar had 94% water, because that's what comes out naturally in the gas, and 6% organic compounds. And that's, there's a range. This one is 74% water, 26%. The new one, 26% organic compounds. So it's actually got a little bit more going for it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that until I already done the deal. And then I said, whoa, that's pretty cool. So
hey, Ghetto Hippie has a question. Yeah, that's the one I was using.
Yeah, the other one is on the website. You just got to go to shop and then.
It was called Seek. It was called Seek. And this stuff is like when I sprayed it, and even now, even the wood and stuff, people go, oh, that smells really good. They love that smell.
Yeah.
Except bugs don't love the smell.
What?
And also too, deer and other animals go, no, I don't think so.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. A friend of mine puts it on like cologne. He likes it so much.
Ghetto Hippie has a question.
But let me share a little bit of a thought with you and everybody else about the wood vinegar.
Okay.
Because some other people have heard about biochar. They probably know more about that, for whatever that is, than they would about wood vinegar.
Yeah.
So wood vinegar is a form of liquid smoke, a very special kind of liquid smoke. And in nature, where this comes from, just like where the biochar originally came from, was when a natural fire came across, left that char behind, cleaned up all the excess trees, so that only so many can grow per acre. That's how I balanced it out. And then the smoke from the fire is as important as the fire.
Yeah.
And I've talked to many professors who, when I mentioned this, they said, wow, I had no idea. So what happens with the smoke is you can visualize this. It's inundating everything in the path, and it's leaving a sticky residue behind. That's basically the wood vinegar.
Yeah.
So it's treating the plants, because wood vinegar does several things, a lot of things, but let's talk about a few. First, we use it for insects. It is not an insecticide. Sometimes the insect will die if you get a little on them. But if you're spraying your plants, they're not going to go on it. They're going to avoid it like crazy.
Yeah.
Secondly, it's a pretty darn good antifungal, particularly for powdery mildew.
Yeah.
If you spray your plants early enough, you'll prevent it from ever happening.
Also works on sooty mold too.
We found also Phytophthora and Fusarium, which are tree root diseases.
Very good
success with there. So there is a fungicide and as a pest control, but it's also a biostimulant.
Exactly right.
What
Yep.
we talked about is those organic compounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. White vinegar, apple cider don't have that. They're fermented. This is pyroligneous acid, basically smoke condensed into a liquid form. And it is just fantastic
It really
as a
is.
biostimulant because you'll see just with that spraying. One thing before I forget, whenever you're doing foliar, you always use a surfactant.
Yeah.
And just a simple soap is a surfactant. It breaks the surface tension. So if you spray a watery substance onto a citrus leaf, it's
It'll
going to
roll
roll off right away. With that surfactant or that soap or something that's a saponin that will cut that surface tension on the leaf and allow the solution to adhere evenly. So very important.
Well,
Always use a surfactant.
you know what surfactant I use, right?
I'm not sure.
I use the worm juice.
It has a little saponin in it, but
Right.
to get what a saponin does is like when you're doing a soil drench. If you pour
Yeah.
water on soil, most of
Yeah.
us have somewhat of hydrophobic. It just rolls around and doesn't absorb very easily. The surfactant will make it absorb down and out. It'll break the surface tension through the soil column and allow that water to permeate so easily that it won't roll up on the top and run away. The same on a leaf. When you're spraying it, it will stay on there more efficiently.
I used to use in the old days Dr. Bronner's soap, which
Yeah.
is a nice, but then they added hemp to it.
Well, the thing about Dr. Bronner's, and I heard this from I forget her name, one of the Bronner sisters. They make two different soaps. They make the typical Castile, peppermint Castile with the hemp in it. And they also make Salsuds, Salsuds.
Right. Yeah, for cleaning.
The difference between the two is that the regular one is an alkaline base and the Salsuds is an acid based. And when you're taking a wood vinegar, which is an acid, or any other types of acidic acids or anything, you don't want to mix those two if you can avoid it. Now, in most cases, with the small amounts of wood vinegar we're putting in there, we're not going to get any reaction. It's only if you like overused by a tremendous amount the wood vinegar with an alkaline-based surfactant will you get some kind of a reaction. It's usually not a bad reaction. It's kind of a canceling reaction more than anything, from what I've been told.
I use soap nuts myself as a surfactant.
In 100
Yeah,
gallons,
they're perfect.
100 gallons of water. In 100 gallons of water, I think I use about maybe. I don't use a whole quart. Are those quarts, right? That I bought for you, quarts?
Which ones? The wood vinegar?
Wood vinegar, right? Yes. They quarts are, yeah. I use maybe half of that in 100 gallons of water.
Well, I like yucca. And there's a product that I get, which I'm trying to get the owner to call me back. I've talked to some GS plant food, and they make something called yucca wet, which is specifically for that purpose. And the stuff works really great. Yucca is the desert plant, and they take the root, powder it, and create the saponin. Yucca, which is cassava, is also a saponin and can create soaps and things too. We have a whole soap line called Blue Sky Body Care that's all yucca-based soaps, and they're fantastic. We have a biochar soap. We got a wood vinegar soap. We've got sage and cedar.
I've been using yours. Yours is the black one.
Yeah, we also have one that's biochar with lava dust for extra exfoliation. That's my favorite.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Yeah.
I was thinking of actually cutting little pieces and putting in my spraying. Getting it to dissolve.
Nah, I wouldn't waste it. That's too expensive to do.
Yeah.
But let's get back to the wood vinegar for a moment, because one of my other favorite uses of it is as a drench or a soaking for my seeds before I germinate. So think about this in nature. We know that the smoke goes up, covers everything, leaves it there, protects the plants from disease and pests, stimulates their growth. In fact, I've been to areas after fires, and all the green trees that were still green around it are way greener now. And the neighbors that I talked to said, "Why is that?" And I said, "Aha." But during that event, many plants and trees are putting seeds out. And those seeds are getting covered with it. the percentage of those seeds that germinate, or any seeds that we soak into a diluted solution of wood vinegar, the germination rate is incredibly high. And you can take older seeds and bring them back. I've done 20-year-old seeds, and they germinated in this solution, and they didn't germinate in water. So I also put in, so the solution that I do for the soaking is 1 ounce of wood vinegar, 1 ounce of EM1, and then you can put an ounce of any other compost tea or any other leachate you get from your compost worm bin.
I use my
anything like that.
I use my
and soak the seeds for 30 minutes. Pull them out and plant. So what I use is a bowl. I have this big metal glass bowl and a strainer from the kitchen, stainless steel, and I put the seeds in there and I lower it down, soak it for 30 minutes, pull it out. Now that's if I have, like, if I don't mind mixing it, like when I do flowers, I mix 20 different kinds of flowers together. But if you have to keep everything individual, you just take little cups. You put the seed packet there. You put the seeds in the thing, in the cup, and now you know which ones are which, and you just do them, and then you strain the liquid out. Now, once you're done with all that, you're going to barely use much of a gallon, to soak the seeds in, because they don't take much in. You could use that to spray on plants, drench around plantings, other things you can do with that solution that still is very viable. So again, no waste, just gets another life.
I know my garden really likes it. My garden, it's only about 2 months old, and combination of everything I'm doing to it really is taking off. The vinegar is a big deal. It really is.
I think it's a very important tool that every gardener should have in their.
Every arborist should have that, because I found that it really knocks out fungal diseases from between phytophthora. Okay, for example, peach leaf curl. If you get it at the right time of year, before it starts to produce, nothing happens. And a big part of it is the ants. So I'm not going there.
So here's some other uses. We talked about health and beauty. In Asia, wood vinegar has been used in Chinese medicine for how many generations I can't count back. And they use it to clean up and fix gut biome down in your gut. But you got to use very small amounts and prescribed by someone who is an OMD. I will not recommend it unless you go there. But I've had people, mostly Asian, Koreans, from all over the country have called me up and say, we can't find this stuff anywhere. Can I take it? Yeah, it's food grade. Okay, I'm ordering it by. My grandmother uses it. My aunt uses it. They say, it's like amazing. So it has that use, but also in beauty. We have a soap that's a wood vinegar soap. It makes your skin feel great. So I bathe with it when I do my bath, which I like to take a bath, Epsom salts and wood vinegar.
Yeah.
And the smell goes away in the room quickly. It doesn't stay there very long. I mean,
I'm an old vinegar addict in the sense that I take a specific type of apple cider vinegar. I was taking it for a long time. I do about maybe a teaspoon every day. Amazing what it does. And so I started to do with the Seek. A little, how they come with that little droplet thing? Right? So I would put a drop in the water. Yeah, a little drop in the water, and I've been using your stuff too. What's interesting is that I feel because it really controls all kinds of functions in the body. It's absolutely, and what it does to my stomach, because I've had surgery, dental surgery in my stomach, hard time coming back. Absolutely amazing what it does. And then you actually can put it in the tub when you soak yourself for your skin. And I find that it's really, I'm even thinking of maybe putting it on my toothpaste and doing it with it. Because I think
you could do that.
The body really, really likes it, and the garden really, really likes it. And it's absolutely an amazing product that people should learn. I mean, as an arborist, I'm in the process of taking the certified test. And nowhere in there does it say anything about any of these things. It's all very basic.
Right. Well, that's all bought and paid for by the companies that sponsor the universities and the colleges and the schools that teach. Right. That's been going on since fossil fertilizers were made. Well, but getting back to your point about the health part, is that if you build your gut biome well, your whole body functions. That is the powerhouse down there.
That's your soil.
That is so
all about the biology.
It is. It's all about the biology. Absolutely. Can't say it any better than that, man.
It really is.
So I can understand that it would help make you feel better, because it is fixing or helping the thing that makes your body feel better.
Yeah.
Because it has to do with
If
digestion, and I mean, there's so many aspects to it. We're not going to get into that right now.
I don't take it, I end up with food allergies, all kinds. 'Cause I don't like junk food, but I take a little bit of it, and I can handle, not necessarily junk food, but I can eat normal food now. And I
Yeah.
do it, and if I don't do it, my stomach starts growling. I don't. So I think I'm addicted to it. I think I'm going to start shooting it up.
Andy, you got another addiction. No, don't do it, man.
I'm gonna do the fast thing, shoot it up.
Yeah, just put a couple of ounces. That's all you need.
But as an arborist, there are other arborists, and they're going, "What are you doing?" Because it controls, for example, bark beetles.
Well, I don't have any definitive research on that, but I believe that it could help. But
Yeah.
the problem with the bark beetle isn't that the bark beetle's there. It's always been there. The problem is that we're going through climate change, and the trees that are being affected, there's too many trees per acre in the areas that are being affected. So here's an example. About 40 years ago, I started following the research in the Angeles forest. And what they showed was that 150 trees per acre can survive. There were 500.
Right.
Now, during rainy seasons, that's not a problem. But as soon as you go into a drought and they got 500 trees fighting with the water of 150, and what happens? They can't make enough sap to keep the beetle out that was always there.
Right.
And that is where the big problem comes. And then you get into climate change. And that's why fires are way worse and different than they were pre-industrialization. Let's just use for a number or a time period. The fires always burned on the ground. They never really went up into the crowns.
No.
They burned on the ground to weed out smaller plants that were unnecessary, leave char and ash behind, create the smoke to give that stimulation and that protection. And that's the way it was for a lot.
Well,
And now we also have built into these areas that are burning. So we're adding more fuel, plus the exasperation of droughts from climate change. And the thing is totally out of whack. And it's a really sad scenario.
I totally agree with you.
In 1904, California started to suppress fires in the forest because they were afraid to lose the redwoods.
And they should have let it burn. They should have let sections burn.
The indigenous peoples, I'm interested in several subjects, and one of them is indigenous practices, because it's so important. Also, biomimicry was what they did.
Yeah.
And we're learning their version of biomimicry that works so well and bringing it back again. The other study is, so it's indigenous practice, the study of fire. Fire is very important to the ecosystem. We understand it. We know that these cultures used fire to manage the land until the Westerners came and ended all that. Yeah. In the Midwest, we theorize that the indigenous peoples would see a lightning strike in a giant field, in a giant prairie, and the whole thing light up. And maybe at first they were fearful of it. Well, who knows? But what they saw, the result of it was incredible, because the deer and the antelope and all the animals came back in abundance to graze there because it was so rich. And they did it for so long that in a certain segments of the Midwest, they have 6% carbon in the soil. And we have less than 1 in California and Texas. We grow more food than anybody, but they have that thing. On top of that, over millennia, the prairie dogs burrowed underneath everything, brought aeration, organic matter. And when the two things met, boom, it started to really, really go. And that's why they can grow so much. Those Midwest states have a very short growing season and brutal weather. Yet, if we look at a ratio across the board, we see that they almost can rival us. They just can't do it because we have longer seasons. We have milder weather. We can grow all year round. So
yeah, you guys get 2 crops. Look at me in Alberta. We get 1 crop. That's it a year. You guys, that's how you can outproduce us, is the length of your season in that temperate zone.
So let me
Well, your
add.
season's going to change in about 50 to 100 years.
It's
Everything's
happening
all the heat's
faster than
moving.
that.
All the heat's moving north.
Let me add a few things. First of all, my experience is pretty much limited to the homeowner. So homeowners can't be having fires. They can't be having the same things as the forest. That's another. They're two separate, different worlds there. So
Absolutely. I should have said. I should have said that fire is a natural thing, but we don't want our homes and businesses to burn down.
Right.
So what we do is we mimic nature in a different way by making biochar in a clean way, bringing it in, using it in our urban areas, making the wood vinegar in a clean way, using it in our trees, and giving them that effect without the fire.
So going back to the bark beetle. So I have a customer now. I've had her since 1984. Okay, so she had 12 different arborists go and look at these. She has a stone pine. It was put there by the original people that owned Malibu, and it had the bark beetle. And they all said the same thing: you're gonna have to cut it down. No good. So the last guy says, "I know a guy does voodoo. That would be me." So what I did is exactly what we're talking about. I was using I was using a form of biochar, because it wasn't really called biochar there, but it was definitely what I did was make tree vents, and in there I would get. I was going to ask you about it, but maybe later I'll talk about it, because I go to the beach, I find these burned chunks of wood. They're really like solid black pieces, and I crush them up into a powder, and I bury them under trees. But my experience has been that the bark beetle. So if I can get the health of the tree up to the point that the bark beetle won't bother it, that's what I did with this tree. See, so I worked on the biology. So I had to, because I love Kiss the Ground, but the Kiss the Ground has to do with farming and all that kind of stuff. And it's hard to get a cow in the backyard, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So homeowners have a very special, different, particular problem. They have no soil. And of course, everything's going through, they're getting stressed out, no food. The city water, for crying out loud, the city water's got junk in it that kills them like left and right. So it's a very specific thing. But the key is the biology, getting the biology on the property to function, and the vinegar. And what you're doing is it directly affects. It's very good for the homeowners, because they are learning. They don't need to learn. They just need to have somebody come along and say, this is what you're not supposed to be doing. I mean, people take. The leaf falls and doesn't hit the ground, whoosh, they pick it up and throw it away. No more soil being made. So I learned. So my whole niche is how to show the homeowner, right, that it's the biology of their property that they have to key into.
That is so great, man. It leads me to a thought I want to share. Okay. We have all these things to fix problems, but let's fix what's causing the problem first.
Yeah, right.
So in my workshops, in my classes that I do, we talk about creating a regenerative living soil with biochar as the key component. And the reason, so those of you out there are not familiar with biochar, it's charcoal suitable for soil. It's fully carbonized wood. There's no organic matter. It's just the skeleton of the carbon left over. It's very lightweight, very porous, tons of surface area. And we make it in different ways, but good commercial biochar is made in direct heat without oxygen in a pyrolysis system. So the flame never touches the wood. It's just being gasified kind of in a chamber with another chamber around it with all the heat. And that's how we get biochar. And biochar is not a food. It's not a fertilizer. It's just a structure. But it's the management system of soil. Beautiful. There we go. Now we're looking at some pore structure. Right. So if we had a piece of biochar that was about the size of a softball or even a little smaller, and we measured the surface area, which there is, methods to do that, it would lay out to be the size of a football field. That's how much surface area is in biochar. So it manages our water by holding 7 times its weight in water. So now the little granules that are mixed into the soil everywhere that are loaded with water are little reservoirs everywhere in the soil column. The roots attach to it and they can withdraw what they need, and it helps the drought tolerate to a high degree. So in wet times, it fills up. In dry times, it holds on to it.
So what
The
I
next
do,
part is the nutrients that are in the soil
yeah,
or that you may be adding in whatever
yeah,
method. The biochar will absorb that like into a little warehouse, so to speak,
yeah.
and hold on to that. And the roots are attached to it. And now they got a little warehouse and a reservoir. But the coolest part in those little pores, all those little millions of meso and micro pores in there, those are luxury condos for the
That's right.
microbiology.
That's right.
That's where you really start to kick in things that biochar can do.
That's
Oh, it's
right.
nice to hold water and it's nice to hold nutrients and
That's
prevent
right.
runoff going downstream. But when you're advancing that microbiology, you're really kicking butt now.
So what?
So, yeah.
No. So when I first started doing this in 1970, I was trying to figure out a way to get a little colony going because these trees are the soil's dead, so we need to have a colony. Rather, in the beginning, I was trying to get the whole thing to colonize doesn't work. So I found these they're called clay drain pipes. They're basically paramagnetic clay, and paramagnetic is a very unique property. So I would put that 4 of them in amongst the roots, 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock in there. And inside of there, I would have compost, and somehow I started using. It looked like charcoal to me. It wasn't called biochar, but it was basically very dark and very black. I knew that carbon. See, I want as much carbon as possible in a form that the microbes can eat, because carbon is very important. I didn't know why. I didn't know anything about carbonic acid, but I just knew that when there's a fire afterwards, whoosh, everything just grows carbon. So I would put them in there, and then I would get people to get a filter, garden filter, because the city water was so bad. Put a little drip head, a little drip. It would be about 2 feet deep in the ground, in amongst the roots. And what happens is that in there you get a little colony going. That colony will start to spread out. And as soon as it comes in touch with, and the roots will stretch out. I found out that the roots will stretch out to it. A lot of times they will wrap around the stuff. You see these roots wrapping around the stuff, and it's like the tree was going yummy. And I learned from experience that the microbes, they have a special kind of microbes that lives on the roots that gives them the nutrients.
Yeah.
And that's so cool. And you can't make up that. You can't. I have friends who are chemists. Oh, you need 5 pounds of calcium, 5 pounds of. That's never going to work, because only Mother Nature can make this liquid that is a complete food that they need.
Yeah. So the biochar, aside from a luxury condo, it's also 3-to-1 carbon negative. And simply put, for every pound we put in the ground, we have sequestered 3 pounds of carbon gases from going in the atmosphere.
Yeah, yeah.
But when you're lowering your water usage or inputs of fertilizers, and you're building your biology, that all becomes a carbon sink as well. So you could take it beyond 3-to-1, but just the act of making and using biochar in the ground is a 3-to-1 carbon negative. And biochar is a fixed carbon. It doesn't break down. So that means it's going to be there for thousands of years.
Amen.
How do we know this? Well, because the ancient Amazonians did theirs 3,000 years ago, started, and it's still there working.
That's right.
It's the richest soil in the world.
Lignin, which actually allows it to regrow, because when they harvest it, as long as they leave it for the right amount of time, it regrows everything that it's harvested. It's a self-sustaining system in that environment in the Amazon.
Well, the charcoal does not duplicate or multiply. That's
the soil structure. Yeah,
the structure, right? And if you could just take a small amount of that soil, and put it in spots in your garden, and it's going to work its way out as over time, if you, of course, take care of your soils well.
Yeah.
So it could be an inoculant in many ways too. So now you got something that's a long life. So farmers, for years, I used to go knock on the door, hey, you know anything about biochar? Goes, wow, what the hell's that? Explain it to them. Man, that's crazy shit, So I don't go knocking on doors anymore. I go where the low hanging fruit is, and most of them are calling me now. So that's a good change. But they basically were concerned that it would be like a yearly expenditure. I got to do this every year. That's a lot of money. Of course, it's way cheaper now than it used to be back then. And I say, no, it's a capital investment in your land. It's going to be there forever, and it's going to make it better and better and better every year. So it's not something, it doesn't mean that you can't add more, but whatever you put in the ground is permanently there, and it's going to continue to do its thing. And over time, the soil is going to get better and better.
Right. I have customers that since '84, and you look at that place, you look at other places, you go, what is going on over there? They use less water, no bugs. Even the ants are going, no, I'm going to go over there.
I want to touch on those no bug thing for in a minute. I got something I got to finish though, and that is that if we build our living soil with biochar as its key component, so you got your base soil, you got biochar, compost, you need organic matter, compost, worm castings, rock dust, minerals, critically important, but also mycorrhizae to build the fungal, because that's the delicate part of the soil. Yeah. When you're bacterial dominant, you're an alkaline soil. Yeah. When you're fungal dominant, you're going to be an acidic soil. Yeah. You want to get that fungal up and protect it. So that's why I put the mycorrhizae in there. So now we built that soil. We're going to cover it with mulch, and then we're going to, or plant everything, then cover with mulch. Usually I will cover with mulch, let it sit for a while, to start building up, and then I'll plant. The next step is the maintenance, and that's usually either adding compost and worm casting from the surface and rock dust, or liquid drenches with nutrients and biology that after I do a biochar job, we're going to biochar a whole area. The very next step after that mulch is on there is we soak it deep, super deep with water. Because you want to fill all that biochar up and get all that water down there to activate the mycorrhizae and the minerals and all that stuff down there. So we're going to give it a deep watering. And then we'll, around each plant, we'll pour this drench of liquid nutrients and biology around the plants. Step 3 is foliar application. We got the master right here. And foliar application is important because the factory of a plant is in the leaves. Down below, that's our supply chain, bringing water and nutrients and stuff up to the leaves. Photosynthesis converts that into sugars and carbs. It goes right back down, feeds the microbiology and the root systems. It's a two-way street. What my goal is to build that soil so well that I can kick that into and then do foliar, I can kick it into a two-way highway. Yeah. And you can do that. But it takes building and maintaining that soil right and doing your foliars. When you do that, something wonderful happens, or a few things. The Brix level, BRIX, it's the sugar content of all plants.
We talked about
Brix
that.
level starts to rise. Now, if you've ever done Brix testing, I've been doing it for many years. We actually now have a Brix testing kit that's available with all the proper tools needed to do it. The main tool is a refractometer that you look through where you put the sample of the sap on, but then you need a couple of other tools to get the sap out of the leaf. Yeah. There we go. So the scissors are special 5-bladed shredding scissors. Yeah, and they'll shred the leaves up so beautifully that when you put it into that little silver thing down there with the handle on it. Yeah. The next one. That's the press. That's the press. You take the shredded material, ball it up, pull the cap off, stick it in there, tighten it down. You get 2 drops. You put it on a refractometer. You're in business. You can read the results in seconds. A second or 2 it takes for the results. But the problem is trying to get the sap out of leaves. So this is, a lot of people have this. They don't have these. So, and these 2 things make the job work, because a mortar and pestle doesn't work. A garlic press doesn't work. We tried everything. Nothing worked until I found this little silver metal tool here, which is fantastic. So we put the kit together, and we also provide laminated sheets of the Brix levels. There's a general chart. There's a chart with all different crops and what their Brix levels can be. The point is that when you get your Brix level above 12 to 13, now things are really cooking, because insects will not touch those plants. The plant created its own immunity by being healthy because it had a lot of sugar level to it. So the diseases will hardly form. And most important of all, the nutrient density rises dramatically when the Brix level goes up. Not only do your tomatoes and your oranges and lemons taste better, but they're more nutrient dense.
Right.
And that's the key thing. So bricks testing is kind of like a little blood test.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Right.
when you do it on the leaf and you do it on the fruit. Now remember, sometimes the fruit ripened a bit, so that reading may be higher than what the plant is actually at.
It should be,
But we include all the instructions. I mean, several different forms of instruction in the kit. It's $139. It's a score. You'd pay a lot more money trying to find all these things everywhere.
So I have 4 refractometers. One, it was given to me in early 70s by the Leica company. It was a $10,000 unit that I was talking about it. The one is a analog, which is a the typical one you have.
Yeah, it's with a prism.
Yeah, right, the prism, and that one cost me $35. One's a digital, which I don't like because you can't really do it outside too well. You got to be inside somewhere. It's a digital one. It's $300, and so and they all give me the same reading.
They're pretty accurate. Yeah. Now think about this. Who else uses a refractometer? Well, if you're making beer, you're going to need one. If you're making wine, you're going to need one. If you're making honey, you're going to need one.
Right.
Or if you're one of the great chefs of the world, you're going to have one in your pocket because as soon as this stuff comes on the loading dock, that chef will go out there before they accept it and test. My friend was a master chef at the Biltmore for many years. And then he became executive chef at UCLA, since retired. But that's how I learned about it before I even got in this kind of work. Was I saw it in his pocket. What do you do with that? I'll show you. I was at the one of his restaurants, and we go out to the dock, and he pulls out a tomato and he puts it on, and he goes, "Man, it barely makes it. We'll accept it because we're so low, but don't give us this one again." Yeah.
So when I would go out shopping with my mom would take a apple and she'll bite into it and put it back, and the guy would say the manager said, "Well, next time she was going there, he would cut a piece out for her. Here, taste it." So I started using a pendulum. Okay, I started using a pendulum to see which one is the one that I would pick. A pendulum, and then I found out that the cook had invented a version of a refractometer for food, and that's when I first got it. I was using the garlic press. I was using a motor and pistols thing, all that stuff, and that's one of the biggest. But I also do bricks level on the flowers. I do it on lawns, on roses, on trees. You just have to learn And the other thing I wanted to say about the higher the bricks, the reason there's a interesting reason why the bugs do not touch it. The more nutrition is because the plant produces the complex carbohydrates as opposed to simple carbohydrates.
That's exactly it. You hit it, man. Excellent. I'm glad you said that. That's
the key right there. That's the key right there.
Yep.
It blew me away.
That's what occurs.
Yeah.
Yeah, perfectly put.
Yeah, and I discovered that on my own. And other people were going, "Yeah, that's true." And Mother Nature's so smart because if you're healthy, they will. It's built into it. I think that the insects have a refractometer eyes. You know how their eyes are very weird. They can see the color. They can see. Oh, that's the wrong color for me. I'm not touching that. See, and that's
funny. It's
frequency and vibration.
Yeah, frequency.
It's funny you say that about the bees because years ago, Ray Serino and I made some biochar. We had some chunks laying on the ground, and we were sitting around. The ground was dry. We're sitting around eating lunch, and bees started landing on the chunks.
Yeah.
Now, there's no value. They weren't moist. They kept landing on it. And then I noticed that many other times over the years. And so what I realized is that there's a certain light refraction off of the biochar,
which they understand.
The graphene or the graphite or whatever compound that's in there reflects light in a very strange way. You can sometimes see it, like almost looks rainbowy or like water, like oil on water or gasoline on water, that sheen. You can always see that when the sun hits it. And that must be why they're being attracted to it.
Well, you can also consider bees have two forms of sight. When they're going out from the hive, they're seeing in color. When they come back, because it's a drain on the resources, they actually turn to black and white vision. Wow. So there's that aspect as well. But we've got some questions, guys, that I'd like to get to.
Sure.
Start with Ghetto Hippie. Is wood vinegar the condensed off gases from making biochar? And there's more than just wood vinegar. There's a lot of other compounds that can be extracted in the process, right down to oil and gasoline.
Yeah, there's bio oils, there's syngas, there's wood vinegar. There's a few things that they could distillate out if they chose to. But most of the time, if anybody's doing this in making biochar, they're looking for the wood vinegar, not so much the other compounds.
And the biochar.
Yeah, and of course the biochar, yeah. Now, in a very sophisticated biochar system, I mean, we're talking about multi-millions, right? But you take in the wood material, you can convert it into biochar through the process. So picture a big giant tube with a Archimedes screw in it, and it's moving this stuff through at a certain rate. The outer chamber is where it reaches all these high temperatures. The gases are, and there's vapor locks on each side, air locks on each side of that chamber. And all that organic matter that's in that wood that's being drawn out to carbonize that biochar to make it just pure carbon is collected. Or in some cases, certain systems, they put it through a thermal oxidizer and burn it to create heat to make electricity and make steam and electricity. So here's the lineup. You're making biochar, you're immediately going to get steam. You're going to get heat and steam. Now you can make electricity. Then you can make syngas, which can be used like a methane gas. You can make wood vinegar. You can make bio oil. You know, those are the main things that are being made from it. And then you can collect whatever little bit of CO2 comes out of a biochar system and then pump that into greenhouses or algae ponds. And the valuable product biochar comes out the end. The biochar that we sell, that I've been working with this group for many years, we make it in Oregon. And half of their income is making electricity for the grid in Oregon. So it's not just about biochar, it's two things. So they don't do the wood vinegar because they just don't. They didn't set up for it. So when you're collecting that all those gases and condensing them through a condenser, okay, then you end up in a liquid form. Now, you take that and settle it for a long period of time. If it's cold area, a little shorter time. If it's a warm area, the bottom will be hard tars, wood vinegar, and then a little bit of terps and oils on the top. Once that settlement is done, you suck the top off, suck all the wood vinegar, filter it through biochar 1 or 2 times to clean up the VOCs. Now you got a concentrated, ready to use wood vinegar.
Can you use, Michael, can you use the Fab Stove to make any vinegar? Or do you only get biochar?
No, there's only a few systems that, on a small scale, there's a few systems. Now, glad you mentioned the Fab Stove, because this is a way of making a small batch of a very high quality biochar, plus you can cook. Now, it makes this stove different than all the other clean cook stoves, and I have a whole collection of cook stoves. I've made them, I bought them. Every time I see a new one, I buy it, play with it, and nothing's like this one. That's Ray Serino there, yeah. And that's the guy who designed it, Dr. Paul Anderson. He's a scientist. They know him as Dr. T-Lud. T-Lud stands for top lit updraft. And Fab Stove doesn't mean fabulous. It means forced air base. Okay, so there's a little teeny fan at the bottom, and you run it off of any little USB, whatever you got. There's an example of one, that little blue thing on the left. We do not provide them anymore. We used to, but not anymore. You can get them. So you just plug that in. You got a switch for high and low fan speed, and a vent, a little lever that opens the primary vent at the very bottom. So we use wood pellets with it. You can use anything, but the wood pellets give you a much longer burn and a much hotter burn. The key thing is that out of the top of that stove, if this was a conventional T-Lud or any other clean cook stove, you'd see this erratic flame coming out. And you'll also notice on the bottom of your pot, all black carbon. This stove cooks so cleanly, not one little drop of carbon ends up on the bottom of the pot. And instead of an erratic flame, the holes that we're looking at right now are designed that the flame goes vortexing inside there. It's gorgeous. It looks more like a gas stove than it does a wood burning stove. And it's efficient. Plus, it'll hold like an 80-pound pot. You can put the biggest pot on it. So it's for camping, weighs 9 pounds. It's 11 by 11 inches by 12 high. And not backpackers, but many people off grid. I've sold a lot to off grid people, especially in Alaska. Sold a lot of them up there.
Michael, do you have any videos that shows people how to use it? Because I have it.
It's on the website. It's on that page on the website there.
Okay, because I got it. I want to figure out how to start making some myself, because I love the stove. I think it's great.
It's really wonderful, man.
I have the instructions right here.
The instructions are okay, but watch the video. The key thing is when you're done, when the flame goes out, and it takes about an hour, so you got a long cooking time with it, and you're using only like 2 pounds of this or 1.8 pounds of the pellets, and a 40-pound bag is about $9. So 25 burns for $9, plus you get biochar. The key thing is when the flame goes out, you pull the canister out, you lay it on a flat surface, put a plate, something on top to smother the air inside that chamber, allowing all that heat to continually carbonize those pellets. And when it cools down, there's no oxygen, so you'll be getting no ash. So when you're done, you have a pellet that'll easily break apart in your fingers. The other clean cook stoves require you to quench the pellets to shut them off. When you do that, you're always not fully carbonized. So when you take the pellets and try to break them up, oh man, they're really hard still. They haven't fully carbonized. So you got to break them up. So that's the key thing about this stove. It makes a better biochar than the others. It cooks well, beautifully. And
you have to use those pellets, or can I? For example, I walked along the beach. I found all this bamboo. I thought I would cut them up in small pieces and put them in. But
here's the key. Here's the key. It's density. Mm-hmm. If you can stuff that bamboo in there dense enough, you'll get a long enough burn. The pellets are so dense themselves, and then you put them in there and they sit densely in there.
What kind of pellets is it?
Just plain pine wood pellets you use for a wood stove.
Oh, so
they're pretty much everywhere, and they're cheap.
Okay, so I would look for pine wood pellet.
Yeah, you can get them almost anywhere. Now, they make hardwood pellets like cherry and mesquite and those are more expensive, but you could use those too if you wanted to. But the pine ones are the cheaper way to go, so that's what I use.
And
any wood pellet will work. You'll probably even get a teeny bit longer burn out of the hardwood than you will out of the softwood. It might burn for a little longer time.
We have a few more questions you want to go through?
Yeah, sure.
Sure, and I was just going to mention, this is the other one you were talking about at the very
beginning. This is the pyramid kiln. Yeah. This is my favorite design over the cone. The cone was too expensive to make because you had a lot of waste on the big sheet of metal. There was so much waste on it. These were cutting 4 trapezoids and a square and welding it all together. And at the very top on the edge, you could see there's some angle iron welded on to give it rigidity. And these, you can make them in any size. If somebody's really interested, they can contact me through the website on the contact page, and I'll give them dimensions and they can make it themselves.
And that's more for your driftwood and your bamboo, Andy, something like that.
Yeah.
In Malibu, I'm next to the fire department. They already told me I can't use my fireplace. Imagine if I have a little fire going on outside.
Well, I got to share a little story with you, okay? So it was Mother's Day 10 years ago, I believe it was, and I'm doing a biochar burn at the See Me at the Garden in Simi Valley. It's a Sunday, Mother's Day. No one's there except a few of us. And we wanted to make a shitload of biochar. We had all this wood laying around, tons of it. So they had it all cut up to right sizes. And we set up 3 cone kilns. We start a little stack, burn it from the top as it breaks down. Then we layer in. So we start one off, wait 20 minutes, start the next one, wait 20 minutes, start the third one. So they're not quenching them all at once. Yeah. And we're just about done with the second or third one. And the 4 firemen walk in. This firehouse is only a block away. You can see their flag. They couldn't see anything because there was no smoke at all. And because there were hedges everywhere. But there's this nosy guy who lives around there, who always calls anybody on the garden. And they did. And they came over and they go, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're making charcoal for the soil." You can't do that here. Look at this place is loaded with mulch. I said, yes, sir, but that's true. But you noticed I soaked the area. I've got steel sheets down under the kilns. I've got fire extinguishers and 2 hoses. Anything happens, I'm on it. And he, started calming down a little bit. He wasn't really, and he finally said, okay, but you can't do that here anymore. Shut it off. Get out. Done. You're done. And he walked away. Never asked our names or anything. And it was like weird. So another time I'm using one kiln in my backyard, and some of the wood was a little moist, so a little smoke went up. And the neighbor was out there with a friend, and they're yelling over, hey, you got a fire in your backyard. What are you doing back there, barbecuing? I said, yeah, exactly what I'm doing. Oh, okay. And then another time I take those things that you put, for campfires, the metal grid things with the handle on it, put your hamburgers and hot dogs in there. I keep those around. So if another time somebody came up, a neighbor, what are you doing? Oh, we're getting ready to barbecue. Oh, okay. So we switched the whole.
You're barbecuing.
Just saying that.
You're barbecuing.
Yeah, I've had 3 run-ins with, 4 run-ins with people. 2, one was a fire department, one, and the others were just individuals. Like, what are you doing over there? Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So making biochar, it's not that hard, but yes, some areas are restricted. That's why the stove is great, because you can make it even if you don't want to cook.
Yeah,
if you're going to boil water and make coffee or whatever, use the stove. I have one sitting on my patio.
Michael, don't worry. I'll still be getting biochar from you, because I need way too much of it. It's one of the things I have to pick up really soon too. You know what I did? I had a bag of biochar. You know what I did with it? I put it in my worm farm.
Yeah, it's good. We generally like to use the micronized powdery version, because even in the granular, there's a lot of powder, and the worms can only take the powder in. They can't take in the granular.
That's what I liked about it. It was very.
But it helps. It helps. All the biomass that's in there as it's decomposing. Let's talk for a moment about composting with biochar.
Yeah,
because this is a great subject.
Yeah.
So we have to go back to the beginning, 500 million years ago. The first fires that burnt the first plants and trees that left the char and the ash behind. That char, when a fire occurs, the char laying around takes decades for it to get down into the root zone and do its work. Decades. In the meantime, organic matter is falling upon it, decomposing. Nature has been composting with biochar since the beginning.
Yeah.
Here's the advantages. So when we talk about raw biochar, it's we want to do what we call inoculate it, or add nutrients and biology to it. And that's
because if there's no biology, you can't call it biochar. It's just charcoal.
No. It's actually biochar. Technically, it's still fully carbonized biomass is biochar. The fact that there's no
biology, isn't that what makes it biochar? Is the biology that you put into it? Isn't that the key fact?
Well, the original term was not biochar. It was biological charcoal that was good for the biological system. Okay. And it got shortened to biochar at some point, probably about 15, 18 years ago, I think it might have been.
I also see it as biochar because living things are what's burning. That's why I consider it biochar.
Okay. So here's the key thing about the composting part. So biochar needs to be inoculated with nutrients and biology, so it doesn't steal it as a raw sponge under the ground, which it will come around and start moving forward again. But in the meantime, it will take away.
Yeah.
So we're filling it up. But there's a few other things that we need to fix first. And that the first one is raw biochar is hydrophobic. Inside that pore structure, the surface tension is so high, it's literally pushing water away. Mm-hmm. Break the surface tension, easy to do, then it's hydrophilic. Secondly, the pH, and this is so misunderstood. Most biochars are anywhere from 8, even up to 11. Yeah. Now, the commercial ones are all down by 8. But sometimes you'll make it out of a certain material in a certain method, and you may end up with a higher pH. Mm-hmm. Nonetheless, biochar is not a buffer. It is not going to alter your pH of your soil any at all, if any. I mean, you won't even notice it.
That's cool.
Why do we want to lower the pH in the biochar? simply because the microbiology considers it habitable when the pH comes down.
Yeah.
Third, ash content. Making it yourself, if it's not efficient, you'll have more ash. You just wash it out. But you don't want ash in your soil because it limes it and it causes pH problems that are really hard to fix.
Yeah.
I had people in my classes over the years. Oh, my grandfather used to take the ashes from the fireplace and put it in the garden. I said, oh, don't do that. Put it in the compost. Fix it. You know, the compost will neutralize it out.
Yeah.
So we've got the hydrophobic to hydrophilic, pH, ash content, VOCs, volatile organic compounds. We want to reduce them down. Remember, they're volatile. They do dissipate out. So then we add nutrients and biology. How do you inoculate your biochar? Well, I have 3 different methods. The best and my favorite, put it in your compost, because now not only will the compost fix everything for the biochar and make it awesome, but it's going to take that compost into a different level, because by using biochar in your compost, instead of getting 1 to 3 or 5% nitrogen retention at the end of the decomposition cycle, you can get 50 to 75% retention with biochar and with wood vinegar spraying it on, because that stimulates biology.
So, Michael, I was going to tell you about you remember those 10 bags of compost I bought from you? I made the most amazing compost tea from it.
Oh, yeah.
Holy cow. I mean, call it for crying out loud, right?
Yeah. So you get a great compost with more biology in it because the biochar is in there. Now, when you turn compost, if you have a method that requires churning, mine does not, and I'll explain that later. But if you have to churn it, remember, the biology, the fungal part of your biology is so sensitive to air and light that as soon as you churn it, you're starting to destroy it. That's why a lot of people are moving to stagnant piles, because they want to churn it as little as possible. But with biochar in there, a lot of that biology moves right into the biochar. Now it's protected. So as it goes through that cycle of movement and exposure to air and light, great deal of it's going to survive with no problem. The composting cycle will speed up a little bit. You'll shorten your time a little bit. You don't have to water your pile as much. It's holding water. The heat waves that normally are up and down are going to be more steady. Your thermophilic event, heat. So there's so many wins with composting your biochar. Now, if you don't want to wait and how much you put in is 5 to 50%. 5 is not much, but it's at least getting there. I use 20. The reason I use 20 instead of 50, which I could easily do, is because I use my compost on my property. And I've already put in so much biochar in my property that all I want to do is just keep adding a 20% amount by volume with the compost. And then I build it up. If I didn't have much biochar, I would up that to 50%, put that 50-50 compost and biochar out after it's run its cycle, and I'm going to build my biochar up a little quicker. So the percentage is how fast you want to build your biochar up or maintain it.
Here's a little trick I learned about using biochar and making compost. Add the biochar to the manure immediately. So when I go out and get manure, I sprinkle biochar on the manure.
Great idea.
It binds everything up right away. You don't lose hardly anything. Then when you make it into the compost, oh boy, or make a tea out of it, oh my goodness.
So I wanted to add, in my composting, we have what we call the compost barn.
Yeah.
And it's 10 feet long, 8 feet wide, and 7 feet tall. And it's a little room that's basically filled with or covered in farm screens, steel mesh, floor walls, and ceilings to keep the critters out. So the pile's 10 feet long, 6 feet wide, because you need 2 feet to stand in there. And the pile could be anywhere from 2 to 5 or 6 feet tall, depending on how much material we're putting in. And underneath the entire pile, there's the screen mesh. And below that, I dug out a labyrinth or little tunnels, and I laid in 4-inch drain piping, the accordion style. So it goes through this whole thing under the whole pile, comes out, a giant blower, comes on every hour for 30 seconds.
Both the air
aerates it, so it stays aerobic all the time.
That is nice.
And then above on the ceiling, I took this whole network of 1/2-inch PVC, and every few inches put a little teeny hole, and I just turn on a little timer for 10 minutes, and it waters or rains right down on the entire pile to moisten it, so I don't have to stand there with a hose. And it does it
You're
beautifully.
way too lazy. Come on, that's way
No, it's
too.
not that. It's not that. It's I got too many things going on. So now,
You
after we
fill
get
the water.
after we get our compost, you know, we have it in two sides. So it's two 5-foot sections. They're connected, but so
Yeah.
we have all new going in here and old aging here. And then we, you know, and when we harvest it, we pull that material out and we have a shaker machine in the backyard. My buddy had it on his worm farm laying in the back. And I said, hey, Brian, what do you do with that old thing? I said, he goes, I don't know, Michael, you want to buy it? I said, no, but I'll store it for you. And I've had it for 8 or 9 years. So anyway, we put the stuff on there and then we hit the pedal, the thing shakes, and all that stuff goes down to the trays below. And we can harvest, you know, 2 or 3 yards in no time. And that's what we do. So we are putting in there food waste, yard waste, biochar, bokashi. Anybody know what bokashi is?
Good stuff. Good shit.
It's a fermented grain. It's a probiotic. It helps break down the composting. We also add coffee because one of my at the worm farm, we get a coffee company that dumps a truckload of used coffee grains down on the yard. So we put that in there. We use manures. We use sometimes shredded paper, frass, which is insect poop, dead insect bodies. A friend of mine has an insectatorium, and whenever I'm up there, he's got me this giant bag of dead bugs that he, you know, doesn't need anymore. And I put that in it. So a lot of different things go into the composting, and we can turn it around in about 8 to 10 weeks. You know, that's what we maybe could do it earlier, but I just don't need it that much. But 80% of what we make, we use on the property. So we only have a little bit left that we sell out to friends and people here and there. It's not a business going thing, but you can't buy this stuff in a store.
No, you can't.
Yeah, it's pretty alive.
Let's get
And there's
back to
usually
the
worms
questions,
in there.
guys. Come on, let's get back to the questions here. Let's focus.
Okay. Yes.
Would it be safe to spray on the cannabis plants since the flower is smoked and that's directly to the wood vinegar?
Yes. Okay. I'm glad this question came up because one of the things with wood vinegar is that you want to use it before flowering and after flowering if you need pollinators, because it can deter them. It won't harm anything, but it's potentially possible that the pollinators will avoid it at some point. Whereas with cannabis, all you want is flowering. You don't want pollination. So you can use it the whole time through the entire plant's life. And I highly recommend it. In fact,
no taste associated once you
no, you'll never taste it. Never.
Okay.
No. You won't even smell it. You won't even smell it. Now, here's another interesting thing. I actually started growing cannabis in '69 in my apartment window in New York City. And in the '70s, I was growing it in a secluded backyard in Maryland. And when I moved to California in '79, in '81, a friend of mine, we were living in our warehouses. I had my beauty business and he had his music studio. And he came into some money and he said, here, I took a lease out on one of the warehouses 2 doors from you, paid them for a year. He goes, here's, you know, thousands of dollars. He goes, I want you to grow in there. So I had a 1,500 square foot growing space, half hydroponic, half soil, growing cannabis in 1981 in North Hollywood, California.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty
good for
cool.
you.
So point I'm making is I grew it a long time, and my go-to foliar application, I don't make compost teas. I love them, but I just can't do that. I don't have the time. You know, you got to really be on it and all that. Is to use a half ounce of wood vinegar, an ounce of EM1, and an ounce of Hyperdrive, which is a proprietary product that we have. And it's phenomenal because it's a surfactant. It's an adjutant that will take that nutrient and biology into the cell structure. No other product can do that. And it has macro and micronutrients in it. So those 3 things will give a boost to cannabis like, wow. And if you want to put compost tea into or other things, by all means. But that little triumvirate of wood vinegar, EM1, and Hyperdrive work fantastic on their own. That kind of foliar on a cannabis plant by itself will show a difference. Adding more things to it, broadening the spectrum of what's in it is always a good thing.
Michael, I want to try out your hyperdrive. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this lady's place in the front with and in the back without and see what happens.
Sure.
I'm not going to do that to the plants in the back. I'm just going to do the whole property because one of the things I'm looking for is the best way to make water wetter, to make the nutrients
Well,
more
that's what's so
available.
unique about hyperdrive. It's there's nothing else like it anywhere. The scientist who created it came to me years ago and didn't want big corporations touching this thing. So he created it. At first, I didn't believe it would work because I said, "There's no way you're going to get nutrients in biology into the cell structure any more than we've ever done." He goes, "Oh no, yeah." And then, of course, I used it.
Well, that's what I want.
Interestingly enough, the scientist Richard Kamalvathan, who created it, was Dr. Higa's assistant when Dr. Higa made and then created EM1.
Yeah, I met
decades
him.
ago.
I met him. I met him at Fayetteville, Arkansas. We were at an organic conference, and we traded. I gave him some of my super seaweed. He gave me some of his EM, and
now
I like
You
it.
can make EM1.
Yeah.
It's like making sourdough bread. You take a little starter from EM1, you make your next batch. It's called EM2,
Yeah,
EM3, and so
yeah,
on.
yeah. I do that.
So it's not very hard to make,
No, it's not.
but
It's
most
not.
people buy it.
It's not. I also bought. It's called Nitron A35. Is another really wonderful product, and another one called AgriGrow. Both of these are biology that they have figured out a way. Big giant bats, basically giant bats, and they making this stuff is really cool. But when the parents, the people who made A35 died, the son took it over. He started diluting it. When I bought it, I said, "This is diluted. It's no good. I can tell when it's diluted because the bricks level did not even go at all." And he went out of business because people stopped buying it.
Yeah.
And people were in business for like 100 years. Amazing product. Listen, Michael, I really am happy to know you. I feel that you're on a really cool path. We need and I've been doing this for a long time, and all of a sudden, recently, I'm running across all these amazing people. Where have you guys all been? Right? What's going on here? We're all
Well, I've been doing biochar for 18 years, so like I'm one of the old dogs in the game. I mean, a lot of people have come in the last few years, and it was very different back then. People didn't know what the hell I was talking about. Now the most common question: where can I get it?
Yeah.
Because it's really blown out. And let me tell you, the numbers, the industry numbers of biochar, it's growing exponentially. It's just absolutely astounding. And all we're doing with it, like we can use it in cement. And I happen to be working with a group that has created a worldwide company. They kind of sucked me into it, mostly for my marketing and other skills. But they're mixing cement with biochar and another little secret sauce in there. And they're creating a much stronger cement. And we can make cement that water will never permeate. You imagine all the piers around the world, they're falling apart because the water permeates in there. Plus, it helps with frost and thaw, strengthening it. And then there's another aspect is if little minute fissures do occur, the biology that will attract to it will glue those little holes back together again. So it's astounding. And then, well, I don't want to get into it, but there's something called electroaeration. Just going to tease you all. Electroaeration is making a form of nanobubble water. But what electroaeration does differently than every other corporation in the world that's doing this work is we have one that not only can use it in the field, but it's so simple, it runs off any 12-volt source, an old beat up solar panel, a battery, the alternator on a car, a transformer, whatever you got that's 12 volts anywhere. We have people in Philippines using them with solar panels out in the fields. So what it does is it transforms the water. Oh, how do I describe this? Not be too crazy. It slickens the water. It makes it so much more available to the plants. And it's sort of like breaking surface tension where the water is going to permeate everywhere.
Structured water.
It is a structured water of sorts. Yeah. Anyway, they just got funded. They've issued me stock. They're giving me a flow through unit. We were just doing batch systems. Now we got a flow through. So in Somas, we had a farm that a year and a half ago, we brought them the prototype and they were making it in a big drum, the water, and then using it for their foliar. because they couldn't do a drum and then water all the 8,000 tomato plants. So they only used it for foliar. And the results were absolutely incredible. So a month ago, we delivered them free of charge, a flow-through unit on a cart. Well, look at this, hook their water in one end, water comes out, nanobubble on the other side. Man, incredible things happen.
I want one of those, please.
Well, they're making me one for my backyard, so I'll show you what it looks like when we get it, but absolutely astounding what it does to water. Now, here's the cool thing, is my friend who made that, I happen to mention I'm working with these guys on the cement project. He goes, oh, Michael, you nanobubble the water and mix it with cement, and that cement's going to be stronger and denser and cure better. So I introduced him to them, and now there's this symbiotic relationship going on, and they want to start testing it. So we're sending them as prototype to their lab down in Australia.
Cool.
To test with. So that's pretty exciting as well. So I just saw the symbiotic. That's what I do. I see these. Oh, these guys got to know each other. In fact, the greatest unpaid job I've ever had was introducing people that became millionaires and billionaires, and literally billionaires. I had two friends I introduced 40-something years ago, and they became billionaires. One's dead now, but the other guy's worth $7 billion. And it was because I introduced him to his partner.
Cool.
And helped him start the company too. But so
that's always the bonus, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's an unpaid job though. What other questions do we have?
We're out of questions.
Okay.
We only generally go around just around an hour. Andy, how are you feeling? You want to continue on?
Me? Who are you guys and what are you doing here is what I want to know.
Well, I'm going to join my wife for dinner soon.
Hey Michael, you know one of the things I like biochar for is put in little pills, pop them in.
Glad you said that. Charcoal is the oldest human remedy in existence.
Yeah,
poisoning.
We're talking tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of years. People have been eating charcoal from fires or from natural or their fire pits. Animals have been seeking out charcoal after fires since animals roamed on Earth, particularly the cattle type. What do they call it? Herbivores. Sorry, just animals in general, but hoofed animals, they really dig it. But all animals, and there's a whole animal husbandry with biochar industry flowing right now, mostly in Australia and over in Asia. Starting to make it here. It's going on in Europe. 80% of biochar in Europe goes through a cow first. They feed 2% into the cow, cuts their emissions of methane, makes them so healthy that drugs and steroids and vet visits are way down. The dairy cows produce more and better milk, meat cows more and better meat. It cleans their system up. When the manure comes out, they mix it with 15% biochar. I mean, in the manures, compost it and use it in the fields. Chickens in Japan, they did a study about a dozen years ago where they just took the granular char and threw it down in the litter. The chickens immediately pecked it up. No flavor, no smell, but instead of a little pebble for their gizzard to grind with, they picked this up.
And the eggs are so nutritional.
Way bigger. You get higher omega, protein, minerals, vitamins, better shell, better yolk. The chickens are healthier, because when they poop, the ammonia causes foot and respiratory diseases, not so much in a home place atmosphere, but in close encounters in factory chicken places, and foot and respiratory diseases are way off the charts. By putting the biochar in through their chickens, it'll absorb that ammonia and cut that by over 90%. Plus, these chickens are going to be healthier. They're going to have better immunity against potential diseases like bird flu. I'm not saying it's a cure, but I think there's a potential there to be very good towards having that problem, solved.
Here's something really interesting. So I've been using charcoal for my stomach for a long time. It turns out this guy's been making biochar and he doesn't even know it. I said, how are you making this stuff, right? And he's making he makes it from pine cones or something like that. But that's what he's been making it for a long time. I take about 5 of them a day on a regular basis. It eliminates toxins from my system. Talk about heavy metals, right? And
it does it in the digestive system only, not in the organs or muscles.
Right, in the digestive system, exactly right. Exactly right.
So, interestingly enough, there is a difference between biochar and what you would see as activated carbon.
Right.
And
That's good.
that's not to be confused with inoculated biochar.
Right.
Activated carbon is a kissing cousin to biochar, but much more expensive and goes through more processing. So before it comes out of the system, it goes into a secondary retort or system, and they infuse steam and other catalysts to alter the pore structure of what it was originally to make it far more chelating and pulling in. Biochar pulls in, activated carbon pulls in real fast. The difference is activated carbon doesn't let it out. Now, you go to a hospital with a poisoning or an overdose. The first thing they're going to do is take your vital signs. Second thing, they're going to pour a slurry of charcoal into your system, activated carbon, which is usually made from coconut shell or very hard woods, into your system. It's going to chelate all that stuff in your digestive system into it and take it out of your body.
Well, he doesn't call it
If you
activated.
use the activated carbon in your soil, it doesn't have cation exchange. Biochar does. Now, you can use biochar everywhere you can use activated carbon, but you can't use activated carbon everywhere you would use biochar.
Yeah.
It would be defeating the purpose of using it.
Yeah.
Plus, it's ridiculously expensive.
Yeah, it is. Well, he doesn't call it activated charcoal, so that's why I have a feeling.
Does he make it and give you just the caps, or do you get it in a bottle with a label?
No, it's just the caps. He puts it in the caps and sells it that way.
Yeah, it's probably not activated carbon. It takes a very sophisticated system to make activated carbon. Biochar, simplest thing you can do.
Exactly right.
You know, there was an old man, I can't remember his name. He was in the biochar industry, and I met him about 10 years ago. And he was demonstrating at one of the off events from one of the biochar conferences. And he had a big restaurant tray, like aluminum restaurant tray, one of the really big ones. And he laid some newspaper down on it, and then he put alcohol all over it. Then he laid pine cones flat all over it, doused them with the alcohol, lit it. And in about, I don't know, was it 20 minutes or so, maybe 30 at the most? It was years ago, I remember. It was a nice little carbonized pine cones that just crushed down beautifully.
That's what he uses pine cones, right? He also has something to do with the pine nectar or the pine sap that he uses. Oh, the pine pollen.
Oh yeah,
the pine pollen.
One of my pine tree in the backyard made pollen like, oh my God, I've never seen it. You just touch it, it was blowing everywhere, clouds of it.
That stuff is amazing stuff to ingest in your body. It seriously is.
Well, I probably want to take it in my mouth, not my nose, because it make me sensitive.
Allergies. Yeah. So we did have one more question. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of lobster compost out of Maine. But what do you guys think of that, if you've heard of it?
Well, I don't know, but I put lobster shells and crab shells in my composting all the time. I throw fish, meat, everything in there, except even dairy. I don't put a lot of citrus in there. I try to keep that minimalized, but everything else is good. Now, some people will say, oh, why do you put meat? They says, I took a class that said, don't put any of those things in there. The reason they tell you that, and they don't tell you why, is because most people's composting setups are not critter proof. If you put a piece of fish or a chunk or a bone in there, a chunk of meat, the critter's going to get in there and pull it out. Yeah. And if it's bad and your dog, like my dog once ate a bad piece of meat that a rat had pulled out of this plastic composter we had, she got sick. She didn't die, but she got sick because we fed our dogs biochar every week. And it's just pretty interesting how it all works.
Yeah. Well, I've had a really good time today. I've been having so much fun doing this show, Michael. This is one of my favorite things to do with Ken here, because Ken's so smart, and you're pretty smart too. And I love this, and we have it all on tape here, and more people are going to start watching this. You'll see.
Well, I'll put it out in my social media. I got a big following all over the world.
Cool, great.
I got 5,000 on my Facebook page, another 3 on my biochar page. And then I manage Organic Solutions page. And then I got, tens of thousands of friends all over that, will repeat stuff. So once I get a link to it and get it on Facebook, I want to also put it on my website and on my YouTube page and
Yep.
pump it out there.
Well, I've been doing this for so long, I stopped counting followers. It's just they're all over the friggin' place, you know. So I talk about OG in the 1970s when I got the name Invisible Gardener. And my first book, How to Heal the Earth in Your Spare Time, I wish I had known about biochar then, because I could this is something you do in your spare time. You heal the soil, and the best way is to start incorporating that carbon into it, start bringing the biology together, you know. My backyard was totally dead. And in 2 months, everything, the sunflowers are reaching the roof.
Cool.
So I wanted to ask you guys if you have ever heard of a guy named Justus von Liebig.
Nope.
Okay, most people haven't. And he's interesting because he is the guy that created or came up with the NPK value for plants and trees in the 1840s.
Wow.
He was a German scientist, and he worked with biochar back then. In fact, he did so much interesting work with animal husbandry with biochar and just amazing stuff. I found a few of his books. One was an old used library book from somewhere in the Midwest I found online. I went, whoa, I got to get that. There's a few of them out there, but Justus von Liebig. Now, what's interesting is he created NPK in an organic way. He's the godfather of organic farming, as if you know about him, that's how they talk about him. So when in his will, he wrote, "I want my coffin filled with biochar when you bury me."
Holy cow! Wow.
Now, what's interesting is I only found that out about maybe in the last year, because I've known about him for years, but I didn't know that. The person who turned me on to him, he told me that. And the reason she told me that was that her name is Kelpie Wilson, and she lives up in Oregon. And she said, she was telling me about a friend who passed away, and the family came to her and said, "Can you give us, we want to bury him special." So she said, okay. So they wrapped him, I think, in muslin, I believe, or something. And then they used both biochar and bokashi blended together to break him down, and boost the biology that would come from his body or that person's body.
Cool.
And then she started telling me, "Oh, by the way, didn't you know that Justus von Liebig was buried with biochar?" I said, "What? I didn't know that."
Did you know in Europe they have this thing now when instead of burying you, they put you in a ball?
Yeah.
And they put the ball in the ground and they put a tree into the ball and it
I've
goes
seen
off that ball. That's the way I want to go.
Well, Brian, my friend from Organic Solution, came up with the term reincarnation.
Reincarnation. Yeah, say hi to Brian too. I know Organic Solution. I get my biochar from him for many years. And
well, he gets it from me. He gets it from me.
Well, so it's the same. It's the same.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to end this show here. Michael, just stick around. We'll talk after. But for our audience, and yes, for the people who are asking if we can get Michael on with Leighton, I'll ask him, but I'm sure he probably will.
Oh, I like Leighton. He's great.
Yep. All right, guys. So say peace out, and we're going to end the stream.